Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, I have yet another guest with me. This is Brock from the BookTube channel, The Active Mind. Care to say hi to my imaginary BookTube friends?
Ladies and gentlemen, the end of the world has come here and a week ahead of schedule.
Yes, indeed. I think what my guest is referring to is that he is a rather unrepentant dude bro,
Mhm.
as you can tell. It's true that he's not wearing the dude bro ring. I know he owns one. I know that you
Oh,
own one.
I got it for you.
Ah,
I
there
got
you
it
go.
for you.
He's got it.
There it
The
is. And then
ostentatious
I
wealthy
have
black
a
dude bro.
Infinite Jest out there
He
for you
has
as
five
well.
copies
So
of Infinite Jest. He has marble busts on his shelves of dead white men. Uh, so he's got the jawline. He's got the peroxide for teeth. He's got the whole dude bro package. And yet here he is on this channel.
yeah.
So of course, the first question that I want to ask you is, at what point in your life did you realize for the first time that you hate women? When did that happen?
It all started when I opened a Joe Rogan podcast after reading Meditations, and then from there I never looked back.
Now, you joke, we joke. There's got to be an element of your active mind that sees how ridiculous some aspects of that world are.
For sure, for sure. I mean,
When I mock it, I'm not out of turn mocking it. It is infinitely mockable.
yeah, the problem is a lot of things. This is just, I guess, anything in life taken to extremes or taken in a very parochial way. When you isolate yourself in this manosphere of this world, you become a cliche or a very mockable or satirical character, whether you overly indulge in specific podcasts or stoicism or whatever it is, or dude bro literature. You become a card carrying dude bro and then someone that is worthy of the kind of criticism or mockery that you dish out.
So the fact that you have both feet planted in the back 40 of that world and yet are not a dude bro, so that must mean you're finding value, as the dude bro channels say. You're extracting value from that world. There
Well,
isn't
to be fair,
from in
I
jest, but you
I
also read
fit.
steel books as well, right? You read Dostoevsky and
I
Tolstoy.
do. I do. I may or may not have read at least one female in my lifetime. Yes,
Oh, please. A note for the grocery store from your wife does not count. It would have to be a
yeah,
whole book.
absolutely. No, I mean, I think I enjoy a lot of the realm of define stereotypes of what you expect. Whether it is literature, I might have infinite jest, but I do have a wide range of more respectable literature for everybody. For those of you that do not adore or appreciate any elements of David Foster Wallace, or for that matter, one person we could agree on is I'm not a huge fan of Cormac McCarthy, or I haven't read Hemingway or some of these other ones. So maybe for that reason, I'm not a full-fledged member of the Dude Bro cult. But even with other passions in my life, like I'm very much into specialty coffee, and a lot of times, as you all know, that is often served up by blue-haired pronoun left-wing people that would look at me and see tattoos, see more athletic build, see the comb over, the straight white male look, and instantly suspect a certain viewpoint. But I'm happy to kind of defy those stereotypes and yeah.
But you haven't yet on your channel. I don't think I've yet seen another emblem of Dude Bro videos, which is the coffee beaker. They have the big
Oh, the
coffee
Chemex, the Chemex. Yes,
because they
I
don't
do
just
not.
talk about their coffee; they fetishize. It's
Yes,
15 minutes out of a 25-minute video.
I think you're referring mainly like Matt Diavella, but it's in all those. Yeah, the Chemex. It's a beautiful and an amazing brewer. I'm more of a V60 kind of guy or any kind of pour over method. But fortunately, I can get away with a V60 to brew for myself and my wife, and provides enough volume for us.
And you have two little dogs called Ubermensch and Nietzsche. Is that right?
That's right. No, no, I got Honey and Dobie, which Honey is now staring out the window. But if she does come over, I'll pull her up. But she reminds me of your bean. Um,
She's
but
staring out the window as we speak.
I know both of them are on alert. They're doing their job.
So, what does guide your reading? Aside from me,
Yeah,
I'm assuming that
of
I got
course.
reading of all of book two.
Of course. Before I was paralyzed by your Dude Bro video back, I think it was like last January. My reading was primarily filled with a lot of philosophy. Are you getting a good police siren in?
Speaking of dude bros, yep. But anyway, go ahead.
Of course, of course. So I really got into reading in kind of a weird way. I didn't read growing up, so a lot of times when I get comments from viewers on YouTube or in the BookTube or Bookstagram space, I feel very behind or out of the loop just because even though I would get prescribed the same kind of common American literature on the syllabus in school, I didn't read those assignments. I was able to kind of skid my way through high school with A's and B's without doing much studying. But to my demise, because now I'm, looking at a lot of the literature I haven't yet read. So I came to reading, I believe, like you, later in life, got into it from all options of dude bro lore through meditations, basically. Well, actually, I'll take a step back. It was actually through Nietzsche. I started with The Will to Power. I don't know where it is on my shelf, but I actually started with Will to Power, which is a weird place to start because it's a collection of his writings rather than a published work. It was published posthumously, of course. So started with that, then worked my way through the genealogy of morals beyond good and evil. But eventually, at some point in there, stepped into meditations, fell in love with Western philosophy, your favorite type of reading, and read that mainly for about a year. But fortunately, philosophy, of course, with the overlap, led me into the world of Dostoevsky, which led me into the wonderful world of just literary fiction overall and just literature, broadly speaking. And really, since then, I've read maybe a handful of philosophy books since then, but I've kind of switched gears totally towards the realm of fiction and some nonfiction as well, essays and other works. Just finished one of your history recommendations. But that's a bit of a recap. So really, I'd say I've been quote unquote seriously reading for like 2.5 years, something like that. So I'm still very new to it, and I admit
Wow.
that in my ignorance a lot. But I've been trying to catch up, so to speak, and devour works. And really, what's guided me over the past 8 months, and it seems quite apparent on to you and probably my channel, is an infatuation with Russian literature, primarily because I enjoy the works, as many do, of Bulgakov, Sholokhov, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy. But specifically, this past February, I read Master and Margarita, and I was like, man, what a theatrical, atmospheric, just magical kind of book. I'd love to like visually see this. And I saw coincidentally that January, it's like a month before I finished it, there was a new adaptation made in Russia. I watched the trailer and was just stunned. I was like, especially like the scene where they're on stage and they remove, I forgot who it is, but they remove his head and everything like that. It was just so incredible. And I was like, man, I wish I could watch this, with or without subtitles, but absorb it more in the natural tongue. And I got the audacious idea to learn Russian. So over the past 8 months, I've not only been trying to learn the language, which has been humbling to say the least, but I've been trying to devour as much Russian literature and culture and history as I can.
That Russian production was really noteworthy because the women on the crew were able to enhance the empathy of the female characters. Oh, wait, there were no women on the crew. Oh, wait, there are no female characters in the book. Oh, well, okay. It still sounds
You talking
interesting.
about the Master Margarita?
So, God. You know,
Oh
you
God.
wouldn't have to wonder where Nietzsche is on your bookshelf if he was all in the garbage. Then you'd know exactly where he is.
Oh, well, you know what book you want me to put in the garbage? Where is it here? Oh, here we go. I haven't burned it yet, and I haven't started it yet. Hey, it's his struggle and yours.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's 2 years of reading. That's brand new to the world of reading. How amazing that is. So that opens up a million questions. One of the questions that I have is documentation of this new experience. Do you document it other than BookTube? Do you keep a reading journal or just a broad strokes journal?
Not a reading journal, but I feel like by documenting, this is something I pointed out on my channel and some of my note-taking videos, is through the act of creating, I've been able, whether that is book reviews, book discussions, even just generally recommending things briefly in hauls, I feel like I've been able to pressure myself in a very helpful way that helps me not only document my progress and how, like, hopefully a year from now, I can look back and say, I'm not as great at interpreting and analyzing and specifically articulating what I'm reading. But hopefully a year from now, I go, well, I've made a lot of progress. So there's some progress or journaling just by the act of doing and creating. But besides that, I haven't kept a journal, but I have kept extensive notes in Notion. So I like keeping a
Oh,
lot of my
okay.
notes that I take there. So that way I can look back like I did last November. I was looking at my notes, reading Friedrich Nietzsche, and I realized how much stuff I just got wrong, misinterpreted, read very surface level. And I'm sure I'll do the same when I reread Demons by Dostoevsky next year, is just realize how much went right over my head just because I didn't have the context or the awareness or comfortability with a text like that.
Do you like Notion? Notion is an app for note taking. Yes, I've heard people
Yes,
use phrases. I've never tried it.
yes. And people, so I will preface this and say I use it in a very simplistic way. So I just use a very simple, I think I took their reading journal template and I even dumbed it down from there. So I literally just keep, as far as like on each specific, I guess, item or entry, obviously author, title of the book, genre, which I started it so old ago that literally the only genre I added was like literature slash novel. And I think I had like short story as well, but very broad label. Um, and I think I have one other metric on there. But then in each one, I keep the notes very simple. I will break it up sometimes between either like a part in a book or a chapter. But I feel like many times with people's note taking, they spend way more time organizing and establishing some kind of template or system rather than just taking the notes. So I really keep it bare bones, keep it simple, stupid. But that's been useful to refer back to either for making videos or rereading books or trying to, again, look back at what happened in chapter one again, you know.
And remind me, have you tried War and Peace?
I haven't yet, but I won't assume you see all my videos, although I hope you watch all of them. I got this really neat edition. There's two volumes. It's a London folio edition. I got this in Montana about a month ago. But it has these very neat illustrations that I just fell in love with when I was there, that they're kind of these like scribbles type
How
style.
would you read such a thing? Do you do
Oh,
any
of
e-read?
course. Hmm?
Do you do any ebook reading?
So my wife plans to get me a Kindle, I think for Black Friday deals.
You allow her to spend money?
When I let her out of the kitchen, yes.
Next, you'll be allowing her to wear clothes. What is this anyway? What kind of madness is this?
But I will say I actually did borrow her Kindle, I think it was last month, and I sent the EPUB file of Moo by Turgenev over to that so I could read it. It's like a 50-page book, wonderful story, but a heartbreaking story. I'm sure you would agree with the fate of the dog. But I had that recommended by a ton of Russian natives that I've spoken to, and it lived up to the hype.
Now, so you don't have anything against e-reading.
No, no, not yet. But I did, when in the video I tagged you about kind of glorifying the object of the book, I do have this reverence, or just I do enjoy, I believe, holding a physical book and the appearance of it and the feel of it more and having it on the shelf. I do kind of romanticize that a bit, but I do plan to do more e-reading once I get the Kindle. I have nothing against it, but I can't really speak from experience because I haven't read enough digitally yet. But maybe in the near future.
Now, you've got a total absorption with all things Russian right now. Can you
Mhm.
imagine? Do you ever think about what's beyond that?
For
You
sure, for sure.
a lot more reading
Um,
because you're not going to get mired in the Russians. I mean, they're geniuses. It's great reading. It could last a
no,
whole lifetime, but over
yeah.
2 years of reading, there's so much out there that you haven't experienced.
No, absolutely. I think the Russian thing, I'm really just, I don't know when there's not a obviously end goal and it wouldn't end, but even like a set point that I'm going to, I guess, leave or separate myself a little bit from this hard ratio towards Russian literature. But yeah, right now, I mean, this whole top shelf is most of that. I just bought some more, become a little bit more of a, not a full-on antiquarian, but I've been more particular about getting some very neat editions. So I've got some stuff that I tried some online book shopping in recent weeks, which has been nice but interesting. So I have those to work through. I got to work through the Gulag Archipelago. I just started the 12 Chairs earlier today, and it's already quite humorous. So
Is that the House of Government up there?
It is the House of Government. It is the House of Government. But I have that, Red Cavalry. I just showed you the War and Peace, Gorky, Chekhov. I have a lot, and then I still have some books down here. But I mean, I have what's his name? Um, Zola, and I've had plenty of, Faustus, Thomas Mann, Magic Mountain. I have plenty of works I plan to get to next year. The Recognitions by Gaddis, other works as well. But
Pride and Prejudice.
Well, I've read Pride and Prejudice. I love Pride and Prejudice. I
Wow.
actually, I know, believe it or not. I think that was actually the only thing that saved me when you made your video earlier this year. I think Hannah from Hannah's Books, and one other person mentioned they're like, I went to his channel, and believe it or not, he did have one video dedicated to Pride and Prejudice, which shocked many. But my wife and I have like a running joke at this point because she and I both have a Penguin copy. I have another copy that she had bought in a used store, and then she bought me this one copy. I think it's just like a newer print edition. It's nothing too special, but they have these for all of her books. But the joke is that every time we see a different edition at a store, we'll just buy it. We haven't been doing that, but that's like the joke.
What is the lay of the land for your book buying? Do you mostly not buy new books online? Do you mostly not buy new
Yeah,
books at all?
so there's some I buy new. Like for example, I just finished Blinding by Marcia Rescue. I had to buy that new, of course. There are some well, I bought well, it's not a new book, but it's still a new print, like the deluxe edition of Anna Karenina. There are some books I'll buy new or buy off Amazon just because I'm like anybody else. Like if it's cheaper, if it's more convenient, sometimes that's the option to go. But generally, I try and buy used for a few reasons. One, it is cheaper. Two, you get some kind of neat additions. Now, sometimes you might not be getting the better translation, but at least you are getting something unique and some kind of unique cover. It's nice to find and get. And then lastly, I think just the joy, and I know I mean, you do this every day when you go to the Brattles, like the joy of finding and searching. And it really does feel like when you go to the bookstore and you were thinking about a book or someone recommended it to you, and then you see it on the shelf, it feels like fate or destiny. And it's thrilling, basically.
Yeah,
So that, yeah, generally it's used books that I
has
buy and
the
shop.
element of suggestion, but there's also at a big enough used bookstore, there's also a weird element of not that you heard about a book, but that you're encountering something brand new to you and it still feels right. I don't know how to
So,
explain that, but that does happen at used bookstores where
so
a book will come to your hand at just the right moment, even though you never knew about it.
Yeah, so that does happen, but I'd say not much for me, not because it's not possible, but because my lack of awareness. As I mentioned, I mean, if you just take the idea of just literature, take philosophy out of it, I've really only been in this sphere of awareness for like a year and a half. So I'm as green as it gets. I feel like when you recommend an author or like a lot of the books on the shelf, I've only even maybe heard of particular people for like 8 months. And I'm happy to admit that. But so it really does feel like I'm entering a space where the world is already your oyster with books. You're never going to read, even a sliver of all the books ever written. But especially in my case, it just feels like every day I'm learning something new or hearing about a new author or all of that. So it is a joy.
Ever tempted by ancient Rome?
I honestly I need to go back just because I need to get to Ovid and I need to get to Erasmus and your favorites. I need to get to um really the Greek tragedies is something I need to get to. I mentioned this in one of my videos. I read part of it in school, of course, like everyone does. I've never read the Odyssey all the way through. I've never read the Iliad. I haven't read Sophocles or these different, Greek tragedies. I really need to go back to those because just like Faust, for example, I haven't read either, but those are the kinds of books that are constantly referenced, right? And a lot of these books are derivative from those, whether it is Dr. Faustus or The Master and Margarita, that is, derived from those Faustian themes and characters. I need to have a lot of work cut out for me, basically.
But do certain outside of the Russians, do certain eras speak to you or not? I mean, you say you should do them because the ancient Greeks and Romans because they mean so
Mhm.
much to modern literature, but maybe they don't call to you? Do they not speak to you?
No, they do. They do. There's certain books that call to me. I mean, there's certain books that have also this, or even authors that for some reason their name or the book has this pull on me, for better or for worse. It might
Okay.
be a book that like you'll despise, like 2666, or something like a Ulysses. But there's other ones that are more in your wheelhouse as well. That for some reason, like the author's name, just it draws me in. It sounds interesting. It sounds, curious and provocative. And for that reason, there's plenty on my shelf down here. They're not really in view that I want to get to. That are out of there, or like Rilke, get into more poets. I haven't really read much poetry. I need to get into more poetry. And I think it's not that I don't like it or don't appreciate it. It's more just a comfortability with it. Like I just read or finished last night, Yevgeny Onegin, and I could just tell it was a marvelous book, but either due to translation, because I got like a 1950s or 60s translation that I think maybe isn't the best, but also just the structure of it was such a shock to the system that I could tell it was marvelous, but at times, because it was written in stanzas and through the meter and all that, I was a little bit out of my comfortability and I couldn't absorb or let myself fall into it in the same way.
If there's a single Russian masterpiece in the world that is going to make a first-time reader think, I want to learn Russian because I don't trust what I'm reading here, it's that one.
Yeah, well,
Why
that's
should
what I
you do it
thought.
if nothing else does? I
As
mean,
soon as I finished it, I was like, I need to, this is probably the first work I need to read in the native tongue. I've dissected one of his poems. I think it was either Ya Lubil Tibia, or it was like I Loved You. So I think it is Ya Lubil Tibia. But I dissected that, and even that, I could see how much depth and things are lost if you just go direct translation or even try and do your best in English. So hopefully, years from now, I can actually read
you actually
in Russian.
are. You actually are taking measures to learn Russian.
Oh yeah, and it is painful. I actually just started working with a tutor. I met her Tuesday virtually. She's in Moscow, but I met her Tuesday, and I meet with her again tomorrow for like our first full lesson. But I tried so long to study independently and to go that route. I did pay for some service online called Rocket Russian. It's kind of like Duolingo, but I preferred it because it wasn't a subscription. And also, I hear like horror stories about Duolingo specifically for Russian. And it's given me a base. It's given me a lot of basics. I've developed enough to hold my bearings okay in some situations, but I'm utterly inept though, and speaking at a toddler level at best. And so I realized if I really want to make progress, I need to spend a lot more time practice speaking and hire a tutor, specifically because I was with my friend in Montana, and coincidentally, of all places in Billings, Montana, there's this shop called Alyssa's Russian House. Alyssa's Russian House, I think is what it's called. It's this older Russian woman. I think she's from like the Caucasus region, so more towards like Dagestan or Chechnya. But she's lived here for like 30, 40 years, and she has this little store. It's really in like the back of a store, so it's almost like sublet. And back there, she's serving, tort or like Russian cake and different pastries, chai, Russian tea, and all sorts of things, as well as doing study classes and all that. And we part. My heart's like pounding, and I'm like, okay, just like remember the few things you know how to say. Just привет, меня зовут Brock. Like just figure out the simple things to say. And I'm walking back there, and she's speaking like somebody studying, and I lock eyes, and like my heart's just like sunk in my stomach, just butterflies, and I'm like just shaking and like привет, and she just looks at me and goes привет, and I walk past because they were having this conversation, and then she pauses and looks at me like we're gonna have a conversation, and I basically just like freeze, and she would say something into Russian to me after I would say something simple like "Я изучаю русский 8 месяцев," like I study Russian for 8 months, and then she would respond, but either due to fear or just lack of understanding her and never really having live experience, I just like froze and I was like, and she was very nice. I was able to say some things later and at least practice some simple stuff. Or basically, instead of Spanglish, you'd call it like Russ English or something like that. I was able to do a little bit of that. But
But
that
your emphasis
experience,
for Russian will be mostly reading, won't it?
hmm?
Your emphasis for Russian, when the more you
Well,
will be reading books. I mean,
it will be. It will be. And I will admit, like my Russian speaking or my Russian reading and writing is at a higher level than my speaking. But but at the same time, I do want to be equipped with the skills to speak with natives or to have that ability. They go hand in hand, but yes, you could specialize more with the reading side of things. but she was very helpful. But essentially, that experience was so humbling to tell me where I'm at in reality, because it's so easy to feel like you have this inflated belief in yourself, of your abilities, when you can choreograph it at home, when you're by yourself, when you can, let me re-record that, let me try that again on camera. But when you're in a live situation, it's demoralizing, it's crushing. So
It's a
yes,
great
I've been
spur to
studying.
learn, though. It's a great spur to learn. One way
Absolutely,
to learn a
absolutely.
language is to have no alternative way
But
to order
use
your
it.
supper. If you have to
Yeah.
know the language to order your supper, you're going to learn the language pretty quick.
Exactly. So that's been the challenge, is ways to like immerse myself, either listening to music, watching movies, doing all that I can. Using a little bit with my wife as she just goes, uh-huh, whatever you say. Uh, but
Would you
it's
have any alternative once you, let's say, once you have enough Russian under your belt to read basic stories by Chekhov? Where would you find such a book in Russian?
You can find them online a bit,
You'd have
and
to
there
go
are some,
online, right? Your used
yeah.
landscape would not possibly have something.
Probably not. There is a bookstore, the same one I got this book, but many others in Tennessee, called the Book Eddy. It's been around, I think, since like the 90s, but very neat shop. It has a lot of great works there and used copies. And I noticed on his, because he also sells online just to keep the business thriving. And he has some works in Russian, I think,
He
from
could get you.
Tolstoy's classics. Hmm?
He could get you books in Russian. That
Yes, he could get them, or people, yeah. So there's options like that. Or I mentioned to you over email, like if Zach sees them come into the brattle, like I'd take a stab at them. I won't be able to read them probably for 2 years, but I can work through them and get something out of it. But yeah.
so so we've been talking about your reading. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we've been talking about your
Mhm.
reading. But what about the decision to join BookTube? What
So
about that
BookTube,
decision? Not only is
yeah,
BookTube full of women, but it also
yeah,
has
scary.
and I am the number one in the wild natural predator of dude bros.
The
They don't
Boston
survive in
Minutes,
competition.
yeah,
They don't survive, except you. You did.
yes.
So
Well, that's the
looking
unfortunate
at that,
thing.
why would you join? What, what is
Well,
BookTube?
I will say first off, it sounds hypocritical, but I do hope there is a return to Bro Watch, because as much as I
The thing that
decimated that
derailed it was
series,
you, bub.
I
You
know
derailed it.
I've effectively ended it, but I hope there is a resurgence so that I can join in on the fun. But I got into BookTube partially, I'll say, because my wife has a wonderful BookTube as well. Maybe I'll need your help in talking her into reading some of these classics. But she's wonderful. I love seeing her creativity, her passion into the channel, and seeing her fall in love with books just made me, I think, a bit more curious. So seeing her do that drew me in a bit. I've kind of always just been a content creator in different fashions before, so I wasn't being comfortable on camera wasn't a roadblock for me or some kind of obstacle to overcome. And it was really first and foremost a factor of helping me progress as a reader, as a learner. Honestly, because as you well know, despite your massive and expanding audience of almost 20,000 subscribers,
Not
if you really,
expanding. I don't want it to expand.
with the exception of good friend Jared Henderson, for the most part, if you're in this sphere and you stick to these kinds of books, you're not going to have massive success unless you go the route of stoicism, or you go the route of fantasy, or um, those more popular genres, genre fiction. You're not going to have some massive channel of success and fame and fortune. So for me, it was a process of, I make these videos, I'm putting pressure upon myself to make sure I know what the hell I'm talking about, because if I don't, I will be called out by people like yourself or whomever in the comments, who will look at it and go, what are you talking about? You're wrong on this, you're wrong on that, or you're not reading this, you're forgetting that. So it's been a great experience to just evolve and develop myself, personal development or reading development. But in addition to that, specifically in the past year, I really have fallen in love and felt the embrace of the community side of things, and had a lot more
Got a lot
messages.
of recommendations. BookTube will fill you with recommendations.
Oh God,
People
yes.
talking about books all day long, every day, including lots
That's
of books that no one's ever heard of.
So that's the only problem, is you get inundated with so many recommendations, and it's a good thing. But then you end up with a shelf full of stuff where you're like, oh shoot, I haven't read that one or that one or that one, and so you kind of gotta get that ratio back in order. But I mean, just today, hours ago, I was having someone DM me thanking me for recommending A Man Survives by Vladimir Maximov, a book that is more rare, rarely in print, rarely available. And in return, he was recommending me some other Russian works that I haven't either picked up yet or even one person I haven't heard of. So it's a fun mutual exchange. Everyone that's been commenting on my videos or people that I have watched have been helping me grow as a reader, expand my horizons, and it's been a wonderful community to be a part of.
Well, those of you who are watching, I know you're noticing that Brock is very nice and very likable. Uh, you're not supposed to like him. He's got the
No,
ring.
I'm secretly building my empire. This is all a
He's
facade.
secretly building his empire. But if you're going to like him, I might point out his channel is real close to 8,000 subscribers. I'll leave a
It
link to it
is.
down below. It's real close. It's pushable over the edge. We could encourage more videos. We could certainly encourage your wife to do more reading, not of the books behind you. We could maybe point out to her that women are better writers than men and have an equally
Yeah,
shelf full of books that are really great. Uh,
absolutely.
whether she wants a slim book like A Room of One's Own or Pride and Prejudice, or whether she wants a really big book, whether it's Duck's Newburyport or The Tale of Genji. Oh, look at
Oh, it
this.
goes in the pile of women I don't read.
Oh,
Now,
you should. It's a really good book. You would really like it.
no, I am. Before it gets me in more hot water for satire.
Well, I'm going to have to move elsewhere for ProTube. I will do a
Yeah.
ProTube video before the end of the year. I will try real hard to do that. You've mentioned in this video all sorts of things that prove that although the outside markers are all there, I'm not sure that they would adopt you. You've mentioned having a
No.
female tutor on a subject. You've mentioned how miserable it feels to learn a subject. That's absolutely true, which is why they don't learn anything. Because they don't want to not be masters of their domain. You're willing to go through it to learn
Why
something.
learn when you have Blinkist, Steve?
Why we're exactly. See? So you may have all the outward signifiers, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that then again, they've embraced Jared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Between the two of you, you're killing Bro Watch.
Well, it actually cracked me up. Just one thing that killed me when you had all your hauls with David Murphy. I saw one person commenting and was like, "When is David going to have more female authors on their books?" And I was like, "Man, if David can't win, I'm long gone."
No,
No
David,
chance.
not only does David not have female authors, he doesn't have any authors who are non-commissioned officers.
Yeah, that's true.
Not only are all of his authors men, but all of them have sidearms. He's too far gone.
Yeah, he's lost cause.
But someday we'll do a book haul together.
Oh, I'd love that.
We'll make the
I
pilgrimage
believe
up
it.
to High Cottage. But in the meantime, I want to wrap this up before the video cuts us off in mid-sentence. I will leave a link to
Mhm.
Brock's channel down below, The Active Mind. Feel free to go and subscribe.
At your own risk.
I'm saying that from an outcrop ring. He's got the ring. Oh, oh, my whole world is imploding. But we'll talk again. Yes?
Of course, love to. Bring the calzones.
We'll wrap this up for now, but we'll all be back. Thank you, BookTube.